Good evening, members, and welcome to another in the occasional series of Wine Society online tastings tonight for the Fine Wine Collection. My name is Ewan Murray, Events Manager at the Society, and I'm joined by my fellow Events Manager, Gil Riggans. Hi, Gil.
Hi, Ewan. You all right?
I'm good, thank you.
Just good to be here.
Trying to avoid being attacked by this plant that seems to grow by the day next to me, but I think I'll be safe.
Just move slightly more to your right. That one seems to be.
That's the one. If I spend that tasting like that, will be good. Good evening, everybody. I hope you're happy to be here. I hope you've got some wine in front of you, either from the tasting pack or indeed from maybe a bottle or two that you've bought. I have to say, such was the popularity of this event that by the time all the wines had come in, Gil and I had neglected to catch a pack. So Gil's got his 3 wines that he's talking about. I've got mine 3, and each of us is just going to have to imagine what the other's tasting. But there we go. This is part, as I say, of the Fine Wine Collection, something that we do periodically at the Wine Society. As he leans over, you may well have got one of these in the post during the holiday season, during August. And we've selected 6 wines that are in your pack in front of you from the various sections. So we've got a section of small wonders. We've got a section of a focus on non-Burgundies, but Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, but from elsewhere in the world, a couple of which we'll be tasting. We've got some sub £30 fine wine Rhone wines, and we've also got we're featuring a Portuguese winery called Quinta dos Roques, which we'll be talking about as well. But there's an awful lot packed into that catalogue. The fine wine offer started off in the middle of August and carries on through to the 29th of September. So there's plenty of time. I'm hoping that most of these wines are still in stock. Certainly the 6 we're tasting are, because I checked earlier today. And so if you enjoy them, then that's where to find them. But there we go. I'm just seeing all the names coming up. We've got people in Norfolk, in West Sussex, in Manchester, all over the country, which is great. Just as a little bit of, before we start, just seeing where you're all coming from, I just thought I'd let you know that over the next 3 months, through until Christmas, in fact, so where are we at? Yeah, that'll be right. We are in Stevenage, surprise, surprise, London, Winchester, Leamington Spa, Newcastle upon Tyne, York, Edinburgh, Cambridge, Lancaster, Nottingham, Bristol, Manchester, Oxford, Sheffield, Liverpool, Darlington, Wakefield, Canterbury, Norwich, and Bath. So that's quite a stretch up and down the country. Plenty more coming also in the first quarter of next year. So if you want to take a look at the tastings and events section on the website, all will be revealed. So we look forward to seeing you in person, but we're very happy to see you here tonight. I suppose without much further ado, we might as well get on and taste the first wine, because it's been sitting here in my glass for the last 15 minutes and I'm getting rather thirsty. So Gil, over to you for wine number 1.
Well, you're going to have to wait a few more moments before your wine glass, because I've got wine 1 here with me.
I know you have. I'm just imagining.
I've noticed a few people there on the chat. They're accompanied not just with the tasting packs with wines, but also some nibbles, some cheese boards, I think I saw there as well, which do sound like a great way to spend the evening. And actually, I think this first wine, I think all 6 will go wonderfully with cheese boards, but in particular, perhaps this first, which you, and I'm not sure if you've got an image that you can show to start this wine. I'll bring the bottle up if that's any help to anyone. I'm not sure how easy that is to see, but this is our first wine, comes from Portugal. It's from Quinta dos Roques. It's the Encruzado, that's the grape, or Encruzado, from Dao. So the map is about to come up. There we are. Perfect. Thank you, Ewan. So we can see we're in the northern half of Portugal. It's quite a large region, Dao. It's one of the most, one of the oldest established. It was established in 1908 after a few years of just tweaks, a little sort of reshaping the boundaries. They settled in 1912 with the boundaries as it is now. Essentially, it's remained unchanged ever since. And we can see it's very close to Douro, to Vinho Verde, but it's a fantastic region, surrounded almost entirely by mountains. So there's lots of mountain range themselves and rolling hills and quite a lots of pine forests in this region, but very important for wine. In particular, it's a very important region for red wine. About 75% of all grapes grown here are of the red wine varietals, but we are looking at a white wine, as I say, Encruzado. But what's really key here, if we go back to the map again, sorry, Ewan, just very quickly. If we can head back, we can see a number of river systems. So the region itself, the wine region, the viticultural region, is named after the Dow River. Perhaps no surprise there. But it's essentially most of the vineyards are situated on or very near that vineyard area and around the valley. And it's been carved, the river's carved through the granitic soils. They're very poor granite soils in this region. Elevations range from 200 at its lowest right the way up to 1,000. And as a result, there's quite a difference in terms of diurnal temperature. Encruzado is a grape variety, which may not be a household name yet. It's certainly an indigenous variety to Portugal. And we believe it's an indigenous grape variety to this particular region. The main reason why we think that is we're not sure if we have uncovered plantings outside of Dow. Doesn't mean that they weren't once upon a time, but now it's very much localized to this region. And it's a grape variety that is growing in kudos. It's growing in praise really of it as a varietal, and it's one that's hotly tipped to be the best or one of the great Portuguese white grape varieties for fine wine. Hence why we're featuring it in this collection, and hence why we're featuring it here this evening. It is a little bit susceptible to oxidation, so careful handling by the winemaker is definitely something that needs to take place. Traditionally, these wines were very much oxidized and oxidative, but the more modern style is this clean, crisp, no oxygen, very stainless steel, protected, very expressive version. This particular producer, if we go to the next slide, Quinta de Roques. So they're in the southeast of the area. I'm just bringing my glass there and putting it beside me before I spill it. And they've been in the region for over a century, several generations of grape growers, but it was only in the 1980s that they started their own wine production and founded Quinta de Roques. Before then, they were growing the grapes but selling them to local cooperatives. But the family made that decision in the 80s to turn that page, if you will, and decided to produce their own high quality wines. At that point, their decision was clear. They're making wines from indigenous grape varieties rather than international varietals. And Encruzado is definitely one of those that they champion alongside Tinto Roriz, Touriga Nacional, and many others besides. What I love here is that at that time, everybody was blending wines, blending their grapes together, or field blends or other. It wasn't until 1996 that Quinta de Roques released their very first single varietal. That was red wines. But in 1998, they released their very first single varietal Encruzado, which I show up here. It's not the same wine, obviously. This is a more recent vintage. But that was the very first single varietal bottling of this grape variety to have ever existed. So they're a hugely important winery, not just for the quality of the wine that they produce, but also historically in putting this grape variety solely on the map, if you will. So I mentioned that it's susceptible to oxidation, it needs that careful handling. But what this producer in this particular wine have, and if you have it in your glass, I'd love to hear what you think, is this does see a bit of barrel fermentations. There's about 20% new oak here, which gives it a wonderful richness, almost a kind of hazelnut and a roundness and a softness and a creaminess in here. Adds that complexity. So yeah, apple crumble, vanilla pod, lemon. But because we're looking at higher altitudes, it's retained that acidity. So it's got a wonderful freshness and energy and a focus in there as well. I think we mentioned, perhaps not on this slide, but on the web, if you're fans of white Rioja, if you like these sort of oaky, almost Burgundian style wines, this may very well be a wine for you. But hopefully, Ewan, as you don't have it in front of me, hopefully I've whet your appetite to try the wine.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a wine that I've tried before. I mean, as people may well know, the Wine Society was founded on. Have I stopped sharing? I think I've stopped sharing. Yes. The Wine Society was founded on Portuguese wines back in 1874, and Encruzado was doubtless one of those varieties that was in the white wine. I think by then we weren't quite as precise in our wine notes. It was more like a Portuguese hock is probably what it was called, or something like that. There was a lot of free reign with names to try and get people to imagine what it might have been. A Portuguese Burgundy, who knows? But yeah, no, absolutely delicious wine. I believe, I'm just trying to remember, I think we might have shown it at a tasting earlier this year in Cambridge, or certainly in Encruzado. Whether it was this one, I can't remember.
We did show at our Portugal growers tasting back in May. We did show this as a series of, I think, 5 different Encruzado to highlight some in the blend, some single varietal, some oaked, some unoaked. But it is a great variety that that we love in the tastings team. I know that Freddie Bulmer, the buyer for Portugal, is thoroughly enthusiastic about, and quite rightly so. I'm seeing notes here. It's not as oaky as Rioja. Yes, I think this has that subtle oak character. It's definitely there. There's a presence, but it's very well integrated. Very fine use of oak and high quality oak for sure.
For those who are watching this afterwards and can't see the chat, I'd just like to notice that Sarah has mentioned through Norfolk residents that they should feel free to check out Kings Lynn Wine Appreciation Society on Facebook. I should point out that other wine appreciation societies up and down the country are available. That's great. No, a good start, I think, a good start, and it's nice to see some nice comments and a new great variety for some, complexity and all sorts of things going on. Just the right amount of oak, says Alison. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's just à point, and it's drinking beautifully now. So there we go. That's great. Well, I suppose it's my turn now to go on to our next wine in the pack, which is wine number 2. So allow me to fiddle around with the technology in order to. I'm not that good. This is the first time I've done one of these for a little while, so please bear with me. Here we go. Talk among yourselves for a moment. I'm just going to hit that. I'm going to hit that.
I do love, as you're getting that, I think you mentioned as well with the event, I love how we have varieties and regions perhaps that are new, not just, new to you and I, and new to all, that we're continuing to uncover and discover. And it's something that's so fascinating about wine, is that it doesn't stand still. There's new regions, new great varieties and indigenous varietals that we suddenly see grace our shelves and our glasses. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Lovely to show these wines where we can.
That's great. I'm back. We're back in the room. So that was the Quinta dos Roques Encruzado DAO 2023. And now we're going to move on to something a little bit different, maybe a little bit more familiar to some of you. We're in France. If you look at the map here, we're talking about Ventoux, which is where the little red marker is. But the darker brown areas that you see are the vineyards of the Rhône. So the Rhône appellations. You can see the northern ones between Valence and Vienne, and the southern ones between Montélimar and Avignon. And then the lighter shades are the satellite appellations, if you like, of the Côtes du Rhône. And Ventoux is one of these, the Côtes du Rhône méridionaux, or the southern Côtes du Rhône. But Ventoux is perhaps best known, if you were to say it to the general public, as being one of the hardest stages of the Tour de France, going up the Mont Ventoux. If you're going up there, it's a pretty lunar landscape when you get up the top, but the lower hills are absolutely covered in vines, the vines of the Ventoux. It's a fantastic area, very much a limestone-based area, which the Ventoux is made out of, that hill. And there's a little bit of clay around the bottom as well, which is where we find these particular vines. If we look at Château Pesquié, which, as you can see, is an absolutely glorious edifice, very much in the grandiose Provençal manner. Château Pesquié is a Provençal word which actually means a pond or a vivarium, aquarium, and it is related to water. There are several springs, two springs specifically under the castle, and a dozen fountains around the grounds. So there's a lot of water around the water table. These are natural fountains, and the water tables is quite high there. So they're pretty privileged there in an area that can get pretty dry during the summer. It was taken over. I mean, the vineyards have been there for ages, but in 1970, Odette and René Bastide took it over, and they're the grandparents of the current generation, and they renovated the chateau and began to restructure the vineyard too, selling grapes rather, to the local cooperative. They arrived in Ventoux, as I said, just in the early 70s. The appellation of Ventoux was created in 1973, so they were there right at the start, and they were among the first to believe in the huge potential for this particular area for wine growing and put the emphasis on quality. And I have to say that while there are several great cooperatives around France, there are some that may be less bothered about quality and more bothered about the quantity. Edith and Paul Chaudière, the daughter and son-in-law, took over the estate in the mid-80s. They decided to leave the cooperative, so they built their own cellar and made their first estate wine in 1990, which is a pretty good year to start making wine. That was an excellent year right across France and indeed in many areas of Europe. And then in 2003, Paul and Edith's two sons, Alexandre and Frédéric, they took over the reins, and they are still there with their own children now growing into the business. So as I mentioned, it's a limestone soil around there and a little bit of clay. The vineyards are at an altitude of around about 300 meters above sea level. The vines are of an average age of 40, which is pretty good. Obviously, that 40 is a really a good age. It's so what vines tend to be in their prime between 20 and 40, and once you go beyond 40, you get into the old vine status where you can get more concentrated fruit, a little less fruit, of course, but more concentrated, and you can really start to play with the quality at the top end, and that's exactly what they're doing here. This is a white wine. They actually make 70% of what they make. Over 70% is red, so 40% is Grenache. 30% is planted to Syrah. They've also got Carignan, Cinsault, Mourvèdre, and Marcelin planted there. And then on the white front, they've got Roussanne, Viognier, Clairette, Grenache Blanc, Bourbonnais, and Chardonnay. Now, this particular wine, the blend here is 70% Clairette and 30% Grenache Blanc. They harvest the wines at night. Understandably, if you've ever been down to that area of France, even in September with an été indien, an Indian summer, the temperatures in the daytime still get pretty darn hot. So they harvest that at night to ensure they can pick it at the coolest temperature possible. There's less risk of breaking the skins and have some pre-fermentation happening there. The actual fermentation happens in the winery in concrete eggs and in barrels. There's no malolactic fermentation, so they really keep the crispness and freshness of the wine going. And then the wine is aged again in these concrete eggs and large barrels called demi-muid, which are 600 liters in capacity. They only make 3,000 bottles of this particular wine, and it's called Cuvée Juliette because the latest generation was had the first girl to be born for 3 or 4 generations, or it had been very much men, boys being born all the way through, all the younger generations. And Juliette was the first girl, so they named this cuvée in her honor. But you've probably been tasting it, and I've been talking about it. So allow me to. There we go. I'll stop sharing, and I'll talk. I'll give it a sniff and a swirl.
Well, I love this. So as you're doing that, I love this combination of grapes. Grenache Blanc will give you a lovely a roundness and a weight and structure in the wine, perhaps lower acidity and a touch more of the alcohol, but some lovely kind of round, ripe fruit. But then the Clairette, always for me, brings that acidity, brings a vibrancy, balances out that weight and structure from Grenache, and gives you that refreshing, gives you that mouth cleansing sort of element. And and I mean this very, very positively, but there's this kind of herbal, a slightly, I don't know, not aniseed as such, but there's a slightly kind of fennel herbal sort of character that I often get with this varietal.
There is. I'm just tasting it now, and I've got that on the back of the palate. It's almost as if I'm having a nice fresh white wine after just having had a pastis as an aperitif.
Yeah.
And it really works. And on the back of the palate, there's an awful lot going on, and it's ridiculously long. I mean, I swallowed it 20 seconds ago now, and it's still there. It's fantastic. I think it's really. No, I'm enjoying that immensely. I was looking around. Shows what we do in our natural habitats. I was looking around for a spittoon, and then I thought, hold on a minute, it's 6:20. And while we're not, we do have an alcohol at work policy. We're not supposed to drink at work, which you might find quite ironic. But I thought, as I'm in my own kitchen, I might just swallow that one because it's very. And I'm glad I did. You get more of a feel for the wine when you do that.
We've got, yes, good length, very pleasant wine, absolutely delicious. Those that are tasting the wine are coming through. Yeah, I think it's a cracking wine, a really lovely estate that have sort of been relatively new to me, I suppose, over the last 2 or 3 years. And I'm catching up by tasting my way through a lot of their wines as we release them.
And I think the great thing is with wines like that, people, particularly if it's coming from sort of lesser appellations, they might not think to age the wines. But actually, as you can see here, we're talking about taking it through to 2030, and wine society tasting windows can be quite conservative at times. So I think this is tasting brilliantly now. It's really, really vibrant, but will last a wee while longer. And actually, it's a while since I've had this particular one. This is the first time I've really been properly tried this vintage, but it'll certainly it'll certainly carry on doing the business for several years. Just as a point, the wine has been farmed, or the vineyard has been farmed organically, certified organic since 2007. And I believe that the 2023 vintage, so the one after this, will be the first one to be certified biodynamic. So for those of you who are into your sustainability, as indeed we are at the Wine Society, as you will know, I think that's good news. They're really making sure that they're looking after the land and the vines properly to make sure that they're there for their children and for us to enjoy for many years. Okay, so that's that one. Gil, I suggest it's back to you now for our third and final white wine.
Absolutely, and one that members who've spoken before at either in person or previous online events. I get excited about lots of wines, but this is one of particular excitement. And I mentioned about Freddie, our Portugal buyer with Encruzado. This is a wine rather, Vonn Chardonnay from Robertson in South Africa that our South African buyer Matthew is particularly excited by. It's a brand new wine. Not just for us, but this is the very first. This is the inaugural vintage from absolute royalty when it comes to white wines of South Africa, but Chardonnay in particular, Yvonne Lester. So I don't know if you've got the slide to bring up there in a moment.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I was just looking through the chat, and Tim was saying that is his first online event. Welcome, Tim, or Timothy, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. Are the slides to be made available? I'm more than happy to send the slides out if needs be. I mean, it's basically a map and a picture, and then the core notes, which can be really useful. So I can put that out tomorrow. I'll put a link to the presentation in the email that I'm sending round tomorrow. Sorry to interrupt, Mr.
No, that's all right.
I shall now share my screen again.
Thank you. So we're in Robertson, South Africa. So the map's going to come up in a moment. In fact, right now, there we are. So we can see circled there. We're about 100 miles east of Cape Town, to kind of have it as if Cape Town is our base. We're out east. We can see we're quite far inland. It's quite warm, dry in this region. Very low rainfall. We're looking at around 400 millimeters, I think, on average here. But what's crucial is we have the Breed River. This is all part of the wider Breed River Valley area, and the river itself cuts and snakes right through the Robertson region. And that's really the lifeblood. That's what allows viticulture and many other agricultural practices to exist here. It's used for irrigation where it is needed, and it is often needed. But as I say, Yvonne Lester, she's the winemaker, the owner of Vonn Wines. This is her inaugural vintage, her first vintage under her own label. She's worked at premium wine producer Rupert and Rothschild for the last 19 years, or for 19 years. She was head winemaker there from, I think, 2012 through to 2020, but decided at that point that she wanted to do her own thing, as many do, and create her own wines under her own label. And she had her eyes on a particular vineyard and grapes and a legendary vineyard here in Robertson called Quvec. Now I'm going to get the name right. Kveikkamp Vineyard, which was planted in 2005. It's Chardonnay plantings on limestone soils here. And the limestone soils are really quite crucial, especially for Chardonnay. If we think of some of the great Chardonnays of the world, limestone soils are very close by to the point that the grapes are very much grown in them. But that allows for naturally kind of lower alcohol levels, a higher natural acidity. So we have wines with great purity and freshness and elegance and a kind of linear focus and charm about them. And that's exactly what I believe when we have this wine we get in spades. It's got a roundness, it's got a wonderful structure and depth, but it gives us that minerality. It gives us a kind of crystalline precision and focus that is just what I really love and look for in Chardonnay. And I think if this is the first vintage, I very much look forward to seeing this wine develop and future vintages as well, because it's only going to get better and better. But I don't know if you've tried this wine. It is quite new.
I have. I've been lucky, and I think it is an excellent wine. Tim's saying that it reminds him a little bit of Au Bon Climat. I know exactly what he means. Sort of it's quite I hate to say it, but Burgundian in style. You know, everyone sort of, but which isn't necessarily a holy grail anymore in wines, but for people outside of Burgundy. But I think it's an absolute cracking wine. It's got that crystalline, that sort of absolute linear feel to it, as well as the warmth of the oak gives it as well. It's just
I think it's got all of that structure, all of that balance. It's got, I don't know what our drinking window actually is if we pull that particular slide up, but
let me do that. I think I'm pretty sure it's quite late. Let's have a look.
It's gorgeous to drink right now. But I can see this definitely developing and just gaining in complexity. It's got that kind of chalkiness to it here. We've got that kind of intense mineral, citrus lead, and that toasty oak. It's very well balanced again with that use of oak. It's not
we're talking 2035, so it's going to be a long-lived wine. I think for 23 quid, I think that's absolutely cracking value at this level.
Yeah, it's a tremendous wine. I'll mention Robertson, just a nice little fact. Well, I think quite a fun fact I often like to throw in. Robertson is not just known for its grape growing winemaking, but also its stud farms for race horses and also ostrich farming, I believe, as it has been for the last several decades. So grape growing shares the territory with other businesses. But it is a region that's most famous, probably most traditionally known for its white wines and premium wines as well. And in particular Chardonnay. But if you're also interested in the region, Sauvignon Blanc from this area are really starting to come up trumps, continuously improving, and those are definitely worth seeking. And on the red wines front, Cabernet Sauvignon and in particular Syrah sort of dominate there. It's a region that is definitely worth exploring if we haven't already. South Africa more generally, I think, is a country that's worth exploring. All the wines that are coming, but this in particular is wine to revisit again and again, I think.
I mean, they say what goes together grows together, and you mentioned ostriches. I mean, they do eat ostrich in down there, and or even an ostrich omelette or something like that. I have no idea whether that would go well. But I think lots of people are saying it's the favourite of the three whites. Jonathan has said that he may not be able to. So 2035, he's not going to be able to keep hold of it for that long. You just need to buy more. That's all. That's the.
I often find that if I forget that it's in the house, that's my only chance.
Yes.
If I lose track of where it is, then it might have a chance.
Timothy's asking whether we have any information about the oak, new, used, etc.
So I will try and gather a bit more in that respect. I think from tasting it, I'm not going to stick my neck out, but it won't be 100% new. I would potentially sort of hedge my bets at around 10 to 30, perhaps somewhere in terms of new oak. But I will try and find that information out from Matthew, and hopefully we can include that, Ewan, in your notes tomorrow.
Indeed. Colin, I'm with you. Struggle to keep it till 2035. I assume you mean just after 8:30. Very good. Very good. A man after our own puns and hearts there, I think, Gil.
Yes.
We're now moving on to wine number 4, our first red wine. And we're going Antipodean with this one. We're going to New Zealand. And here we go. I'm going to share my screen. I can do that much. Here we are. So you'll see where the red circle is. We're at the northern tip of the South Island. Funnily enough, we're further north than the southern bit of the North Island. But we're in Nelson. And you'll see, right across New Zealand, or right the length of New Zealand, from the top there to the Northlands, right the way down to Central Otago. That is a huge area for one country to cover climatically. I think I saw a map recently that if you have, if you lay New Zealand down over Europe, it goes from Norway down to Spain, or even a bit further, or to North Africa. It's pretty darn long, and we are right in the pretty much slap bang in the middle of winemaking country in Nelson, very much influenced by the Tasman Sea. It can get a little windy. Of those of you who've been to New Zealand and been to Wellington, it gets pretty windy down there as the winds blow between in either direction, between the Pacific and the Tasman Sea, and vice versa. And Nelson benefits from that in that it attenuates any extremes of weather. But it's a delightful area to visit. It's very, not a lot was known about Nelson, it has to be said, until the Neudorf started coming along, really. They planted Neudorf vineyards. There we go. There's the winery, a hard-working winery. They've got a few problems with birds and hail and things like that every now and again, so out come the nets. And you'll see that they've got plenty of sunshine down there, and they use the solar panels. But Tim and Judy Finn, it was, who founded the estate. They planted their first vines in 1978, and the slopes of the vines overlook the Moutere Valley there in Nelson. They called it Neudorf because there was a little hamlet nearby founded by German settlers back in the 19th century called Neudorf, or New Village, and that's what they called it. And I love it when you talk to Judy about this. I love the fact that she admits that what they lacked in expertise or knowledge at the time, they made up for with youth, self-belief, and friends. They planted loads of great varieties back there in the late 70s, early 80s, just to see which were best suited. As we said, Nelson was a relatively new area for vineyards at the time, but it wasn't long before they realized that Moutere Chardonnay was their best bet. And so Chardonnay is what they focused on at first. And then they included other great varieties with great success. Sauvignon Blanc is one, Riesling is another, and Pinot Gris, and then the Pinot Noir, which we're tasting now. They plant at really high densities, so the vines are very close together. So the vines are really struggling for this competition, really, between the vines to see who can pick up the nutrients, and therefore the roots go really deep down, and it creates a lot of character, a lot of richness in the wines, great concentration, and a fantastic length on the palate. Some of the wines are completely sourced from fruit around the area, whereas others come from single vineyards. This is one particular area, Tom's Block. Tom and Rosie are the children of Tim and Judy, and Tom's Block is Pinot Noir, and it's an absolute stunner as far as I'm concerned. The Finns were founders. Well, we've been talking about sustainability earlier. The Finns were founders of the New Zealand Sustainable Viticulture Group. They always put organic soil matter in. They're not using chemicals. They're composting all their winery waste. They sort of breed microorganisms therein. They want a natural approach with minimum intervention. It's not what we call natural wines, but it's letting nature do the work, really. They want wines, as they say, that have poison finesse, that speak of more of place than of winemaker, and I think they manage that here. I'm just giving it a sniff right now.
I think Neudorf, as you do that, and you mentioned about that kind of natural, natural wines or such. It's this, I suppose, new culture or new ethos. the sort of us at the Wine Society are very much kind of championing is this high attention, low intervention. So that attention to detail, that meticulous understanding and knowledge of not just your vines, the vineyards, the soils, and everything, allows you then to intervene much less frequently. So it is, in a sense, that when we talk about that low intervention, that's what we mean. There's actually a huge amount of attention to detail and skill and mastery in order to afford that. But what you get in those wines, and Neudorf is an absolute, excellent example of it, is just such good quality across the entire range of their wines. But this in particular, I think, is gorgeous.
I think it's lovely. I mean, they do a higher level wine, the home block, which retails for about twice the price of this, and that is an absolutely stunning wine. But for me, I mean, again, I'm drinking it now. It's warming, but it's fresh. It's got structure. It's got those tannins, but they're really soft. Just so they're delicate. They are there, but it means that actually this is a wine that you shouldn't be frightened of pairing with some sort of more slightly stronger foods, if you like. Pinots, you maybe want to go things with a bit of finesse, but I think the depth of fruit along with the tannins would make it for a sort of like grilled meats on a barbecue quite easily. Might even something a bit richer than that. I'm one who people say I'm rather odd, but when I'm well, people say that anyway. But in particular, when you're having a soft white French cheese, a Camembert or a Brie or something like that, I will often go Pinot with that. I mean, I'm very much a white wine person with cheese, but if I have Pinot and Camembert, to me, just creates this fantastic honeyed feeling in my mouth. It gives a real sort of sweetness and a richness. It sort of heightens both sensations. So I might suggest that as a match myself, alongside the usual meaty fish, the tunas, the swordfish, the salmons, it would go very well with, and the sort of the pork and the grilled lamb and that sort of thing may go very well. And at this season, we have to say a little bit of game. I was very unfortunate the other day to go to a local restaurant and they just run out of grouse. But if I was going to have grouse, this would be something that would go very well with that. So yeah, this is they've come a long way since their early days. But I love the way Judy again they say they say that making wine. This is a quote from them. Making wine is constantly scary and stimulating. We survive on hard work, high hopes, a dollop of common sense, and cunning. If any of you are visiting New Zealand in the months and years to come, the Finns are fantastic hosts, and they're always delighted to see Wine Society members pop in. Just ring ahead, and they'll show you around. As you saw in the picture, the vineyards are pretty darn close to the winery. It's not as if you have to go very far to get into those vines, and they are fantastic hosts. Either generation that we know. I've been at the Wine Society for just over 20 years now. I met Tim and Judy very early on, and they're great people to have around. Great people. So I think this is, you were talking about the sort of cherry flavors and things that go with that. A little bit of vanilla coming from the oak as well.
Yeah,
just elegant. I think there's a fil rouge running through all of these wines of elegance, some power as well. And freshness. So whatever's going on there's that complexity, but there's still that wonderful freshness that you don't always get with a lot of wines that don't come from the Wine Society. Just put that out there. But yeah,
yes, and I think that for me, when we talk of fine wine and we try and sort of describe what we mean by it, that's for me when I describe a wine as a fine wine, it has that balance. It's almost like power. The wine knows its power, but it knows also how much to give.
Yeah, no, in the inside front cover of our offer, it says fine wine should offer an experience that is memorable and life-affirming, whatever price you're paying. There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, delish. Okay, I'm aware time is marching on. So let us move on to our next wine. And there we go. Now there's a country a map that we haven't seen very often at the Wine Society over the years.
Yes. My final wine of the three, my red, is from Cyprus, as we can see from the map here. This is our Makarounas wineries, Maratheftiko. As you can see
Well
from this,
done.
thank
Well
you,
done.
thank you. You said it quickly and with confidence. But it's produced by the Makarounas family. We can see from the star here, we're about 14, 15 kilometers east of Paphos. It's the largest wine growing region of Cyprus. And Theodoros Makarounas founded the estate, founded the winery in 2016. So it's a relatively new, well, it is, it's within its first decade. However, a bit like our first wine, the family have been growing grapes in the region for 4 generations. So they're not brand new to wine at all, but they were growing grapes rather than making the wines. It was Theodoros that sort of took that step with the family and led them into their own winery and winemaking back in 2016. One very key point for me is that they're the only winery in Cyprus that kind of follow what we would call like an estate model or a chateau model, in that all of the grapes that they use for their wines are estate grown. So all of the fruit that they use are grown by themselves. They are the only winery in Cyprus, I believe, who currently do that. So that's something that they're really kind of blazing that path, and they're able to control, of course, every element of grape growing and winemaking. And the results, I think, really speak for themselves. The quality here, we do one white wine, I believe, currently, and this is their red Maratheftiko. Are beautiful wines and really expressive and very unique as well. It's difficult for me to say this is like another style of wine. I don't tend to sort of like necessarily to do that, but they've been organically farming since 2010, Theodoros. And what's also quite crucial here is phylloxera, that louse that sort of ravaged through most of Europe in the sort of 1860s and beyond, didn't reach this part of Europe, didn't reach the island, and didn't reach these vineyards. So they're ungrafted. They're phylloxera free, and lots of the vines in this region are over 100 years old. So some very old ungrafted vines, which is something of a rarity, certainly in European vineyards. They own about 28 hectares, and altitudes varying from 400 to 600 meters. And the region's got a very warm Mediterranean climate. I've not personally had the good fortune of visiting Cyprus, but I imagine it's got wonderful Mediterranean climate there, but lovely and warm. But it's got considerable rainfall. It's over 600 millimeters on average. And so at altitude, we have some cooling influences. We've got runoff there and sort of poorer nutrient-rich soils or nutrient poor soils, which help with the quality of the wines, the resultant wine. To the grape variety, Ewan, I'm not sure how many Marathefticos you've had over your
Oh,
years of winemaking.
about none.
Yes,
Mm.
I can't say I've had too many, but I certainly will be having more. But what's very interesting about this grape, it means theft, Maratheftico, and it produces it's a rare grape. It's indigenous to the region. Very dark skin, produces wines with a real intense color. I'm not sure how well this is going to come across, but a real lovely deep color. And wines with great structure. There's a lovely tannic structure on this wine, loads of poise, black fruit, and a perfumed, quite fragrant violets. Those sorts of flavors and aromas sort of spring to mind when I nose and taste this wine. The other thing that's quite interesting with this grape is it doesn't self-pollinate. So it needs it's co-planted with Sportico, another an indigenous grape variety, which blooms at around the same sort of time. And so what that does, it allows for a bit of pollen transfer and allows for successful fruiting. So that's one way that winemakers, grape growers have kind of adapted to that challenge, and they're ongoing in terms of trying to find solutions. But that's currently, so this grape is co-planted with another indigenous varietal. Um, it sees a little bit of maturation, French oak mainly. A combination of new and old oak, so somewhere between sort of everything from second fill right the way through to fifth fill. So a little bit of new oak character coming through on this wine, but an awful lot of old oak. So not trying to impart those oak flavors, but just allowing the wine to sort of marry a little bit more, maybe soften the tannins, add a little bit more wood grain structure and tannics perhaps in there as well. And that's for about 12 months. But on the nose here, it's just bursting with ripe red and black fruits, a really inviting nose. As we say, it's got that cherry sour, but also ripe. We've got that cherry character. There are very firm tannins, definitely. And there we go, 30% new oak, which just gives it a little more of that wood grain, a little bit of a spice to it as well, and that savoury character from black olive, that tapenade, but with those violets still coming through towards the end. So it's an incredibly complex wine, but the acidity is wonderfully bright. It's very refreshing, really clean, and I can see myself experimenting with food and wine matching on this wine for several more months as we walk into autumn and winter.
Excellent.
Sure. Yeah,
I'm quite looking forward to trying that one because it talks about Sangiovese, and others are agreeing with that sort of Sangiovese like, and I do like my Chianti, and I like my Corsican Sangiovese. So anything Sangiovese like from the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, got to be good. So I'll definitely.
Yeah, and we've got a note here. It feels like it might need a bit more age. I agree. I think it won't. It will certainly not. Have a negative impact on the flavour on the wine if it sees a little bit more age. But certainly at the moment, it's if you like your wines with wonderful kind of plush, vibrant fruit flavour characters and that fruit dominant palate, then it's perfectly drinkable right now. A little bit more time breathing as well, warming up in the glass will just help to smooth it out even more.
Yeah, we say 2028 in the notes, which does seem a little bit conservative, but bearing in mind this is the first time that we've actually tried this wine and bought this wine, we may be going on the back of slightly on the back of what the winemaker says. So it's a question of experimentation. If you can hold on to it that long, but 2028 is even nearer than 2020. You know, it's even before 8:30, isn't it? So we might have some trouble holding on to it that long. But no, yeah, quite. No, great. No, fantastic. No, really, it's really good. I think it's always good to have some eye openers here, and have wines that we haven't necessarily tried before. Great varieties that we haven't tried before, and that's what the society is all about. We know that our members love exploring and just not sitting down with the boring and the mundane, but actually, even if we come back to the wines we love, it's great to practice.
Yes, I think that's what's currently, at least in particular for me, as I look at the wine, us as wine drinkers and consumers, us very much included. I have this great interest in these indigenous grape varieties, and it seems that I'm not alone in that, which is wonderful. But the likes of Portugal, Greece, Cyprus, definitely are three countries that immediately spring to my mind as having kind of retained that indigenous varietals alongside some international grapes. Italy, of course, is probably one of the more famous with several grape varieties that you don't see anywhere else that might go by different names depending on which region you're in. But it's wonderful to taste some of these new varieties to us and explore our palates a little bit, especially when they're as good as this.
Yes, indeed. Great. That's wine number 5. So with around 8 minutes to go until our scheduled finish time, it's time to move on to our final wine. And we were talking about wines and wine styles that people may be more familiar with. I suspect that several people may be a little bit more familiar with this particular style in any case. I'm just going to share my screen once more and move on to Le Vignoble de Bordeaux. So we're talking France, we're talking the west coast of France, we're talking Bordeaux, of course. But Bordeaux is multifaceted. While the grape varieties may be relatively few compared to some of the areas, some of the countries and some of the regions we go to, they really do manage to make them very well. We are, for this particular wine, in Saint-Estèphe. You will see that ringed towards the top of the Médoc Peninsula, on the left bank of the Gironde estuary, and Saint-Estèphe is the most northerly of the communal appellations. You've got Médoc and Haut Médoc, etc., which are more sort of generic, and Entre deux Mers, etc. But this one we're talking this is the most northerly of the communes of Bordeaux, Saint-Estèphe. And an excellent map. We don't always get excellent maps from generic wine bodies, but Bordeaux always seem to manage to do very well. It was very easy for me to find where Saint-Estèphe was in that particular one. And this time we're talking about Château Labory. It's in, as I said, the commune of Saint-Estèphe. And you saw on the map that the being so close to the Gironde, so makes it being so far north up the Medoc is maybe a little cooler than other appellations up there. We're only talking tiny little bits of cool, but that can make a huge difference in an area which can be subject to the vagaries of the weather in many sort of microclimate sort of ways. This one, the estate is named the Château Cos Labory. Cos is the name of the old name for a gravel hill, Caux, Cou, or Cos, probably originally pronounced Cou, but it seems to have become anglicized a little bit. So Cos Labory. Labory is the name of the first owner of the estate as a wine estate, which he owned until 1845. And then Mr. Louis Gaspard d'Estournel, which is a name you may be familiar with, certainly the surname there, he bought it. He owned the neighboring Cos d'Estournel, same the same Cos, the same gravelly hills. Various owners ensued, and François Audois took over from his father-in-law, Georges Weber, in 1959, and his son Bernard took over from him in 2000. And only in 2023 did he sell it on. So there was quite a bit of stability there around Cos Labory. And 2023 it's just been sold again to a gentleman called Michel Ribier, and we'll have to see what comes from his purchase of the property. It's a fifth growth in the Bordeaux classification of 1855, along with 18 other chateaux. It has, in our view, and in some other views as well, tended to underperform compared to others, but in great years, certainly the Audois have turned it around a bit since 2000, but in great years and good vintages, then it really does stand out. And 2014 is one of those years where we believe it really stands out. You'll come on, you'll taste it, and you may see why. It's 35 hectare property, but around about half of which are under vine. And the property is generally made up of lots of little gravelly islands. The gravel on the Medoc Peninsula is mainly made up from the gravel that came washed down by the rivers, a glacial moraine, and then silt and gravel from the rivers. So there's lots of these gravelly hills. And when we're talking hills in the Medoc, anything over about sort of 15 meters above sea level is a hill. I think the highest point in the Medoc is in the middle, and I don't think I'm not quite sure whether it reaches triple figures, but it's very low-lying peninsula. But it really does. The gravel is brilliant for drainage, so the vine roots have to go down a long way to find the water in the sort of clay undersoils. But they have to go down a heck of a long way, which is why you get these wonderful, strong, mineral kind of edges to the wines there. The oldest vines on the estate are well over 35, 40, 45, 50 years old. And it is the oldest vines on top of the hill, in inverted commas, where there are three patches of wonderful gravel, where the gravel is particularly deep, and therefore the roots have to go even deeper to find the water. That's where you're going to find the vines that go into this Grand Vin. The vineyard's planted half with Cabernet Sauvignon, a third with Merlot, and there's a little bit of Cabernet Franc and Petit Verdot in Bordeaux. And we're talking here the 2014 vintage, particularly good in Saint-Estèphe. As I said, microclimates, and it can vary around the Bordeaux area. But we've got a blend here: 55% Cab Sauv, 40% Merlot, and just 5% of the Cabernet Franc. Fermentation is temperature controlled in stainless steel vats when they're making this wine at around about 29 or 30 degrees centigrade. And they pump over frequently, so they're pumping the wine down the bottom and putting that on top of the skins, and the wine soaks through and takes on more of the tannin and the color from the skins, and they macerate, so that it stays in contact with the skins for 3 to 4 weeks, and then they rack that off and they put it into oak for 15 months, and the oak is around about 40% new. So it's not totally shiny, polished, 100% new oak, because that would just hide the fruit entirely. We're talking 40% new. And then the wine finally is fined but not filtered. So it takes the big lumps out when they're fining it, but they don't filter it, and they make sure that all the goodness stays in, the stuff that you might find at the bottom of the wine after several years. And when you decant it off, makes very good basis for gravy, I find. But yeah, let's have a taste of it. Sorry, you're not there to taste, or you are there, but not to taste.
That's okay. I'm tasting it in my mind.
I'm sure you are. Yeah.
You mentioned about the gravel soils. Gravel soils, of course, they're not over the entirety of the Medoc. There are patches, as you said, across many of the appellations, but it's those areas where you're fortunate enough or have those gravel soils, not just for that extra drainage, but also they kind of retain the heat and radiate that heat back into the vine. So in an area and a region like Bordeaux, which can have those sort of struggles to ripen in certain years and certainly vintage variations and cooler climate, having those opportunities and those soils that lock in a bit more heat and just give that back to the vine is a crucial part. So there's no, it's not a coincidence that some of the great wines from this region come from those gravelly soils, especially with Cabernet Sauvignon, that is that later ripener that needs that extra warmth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. It's a good dump. No, I've just tasted it now, and again, it's got that thread that's running through it all, and there's a lightness, there's a crunchiness, there's a freshness. The tannins are there, but they're not at all overwhelming. I mean, the wine is 11 years old, so of course that's going to help. But there's a depth and a power to the fruit in the middle of all of that, which is really tremendous. I have to say, I'm not the world. Well, I was never the world's biggest Bordeaux fan, because I think there's too much wine around the world to just concentrate in one area. But actually, there are wines like this that make me sit up and think, oh, have I been missing something? I'm sure I have. I mean, I do like. I particularly like it when it's aged like this as well. There's a real sort of just beginning to take on those tertiary notes as well. There's a slight bit of leatheriness there, and extra more complexity that comes in as well. But for me, the freshness that runs through that is just through the whole thing is fantastic. Some great comments coming in on that one as well. Much help for my WSET level 3 exam coming up soon.
Good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Interesting to taste in the sample pack, and somebody asking whether we could, and I will have a word with Jamie at EcoSip about this. Somebody were asking whether we could maybe make a video of how the wine actually goes into the pack. That would be quite interesting. So we'll look at that one.
Well, lots of votes are coming in as well, and I'm not sure if you can see this, Ewan.
I can, and
no need for a poll on this occasion.
No, I think it seems they're all pretty good. Some people like 645, 465, 456, 654. Yeah, it's I haven't seen 5 come in. Oh yes, no, I have 5 coming in. Yeah. 5 coming in, a lovely wine at great value as well. So yeah, lots going on there, which is fantastic, and we're delighted that all the wines seem to be favourites to somebody. That's always a great thing about these particular events. We always want to make sure that there's something for everybody. So I'm just going to bring us on. That actually concludes our presentation and our tasting for this evening. We do hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have enjoyed it, we've got some more coming up. These ones don't have tasting packs attached. There's an extra one, which I'll mention a little bit later. But coming up next week, you'll see it's at 5 p.m. rather than 6 p.m. That's because Samuel Guibert of Master Domas Gassac in Languedoc wants to make sure that it's still daylight, because he's going to be coming direct from his vineyards for that event. So that's one of our Meet the Winemaker events, where we'll be talking with Samuel Guibert about Languedoc, and in particular about the fantastic Master Domas Gassac estate. Samuel's very entertaining, so that's one well worth checking in on, either live or indeed on YouTube afterwards. And then the following week, on the Friday the 19th, Pierre Mansour, our director of wine, and me will be discussing Grenache. It's the International Grenache Day on the 19th of September, instigated a few years ago. I think one of the pioneers of that was Chester Osborne of Darrenburg in Australia. And I mean, we can drink Grenache every day, but it's nice to be able to celebrate the wine. So we'll be doing a taste along there of 4 different Grenaches, but bring along your own and taste along with us as Pierre and I dissect what makes Grenache such a great wine, either on its own or indeed in blending. And then I'm delighted that a very good friend of mine, Natasha Hughes, Master of Wine, who's just published a book called The Wines of Beaujolais. She will be presenting about Beaujolais. It'll be another taste along, and we're in the process of selecting the wines that we'll be suggesting that you buy for that one. So they'll be up on the website shortly, but the event is already on the website, as is a link to Natasha's book, where Wine Society members can get a 15% discount on the cover price. Details are all on the website about that one. The next tasting pack event, I know there's one that's about to go online, and one that is about to, let me stop sharing there, one that's about to be organised as well. So we've got a sherry tasting coming up in November, in the run-up to Christmas, where we'll have 6 separate sherries being run by our colleague Catherine, with the assistance of the sherry, the Consejo, or the sherry, the people representing sherry here in the UK. And then I believe there's going to be a Yalumba one as well in the near future too, from so highlighting that fantastic Australian wine. But don't quote me on that, but that's in the pipeline as well. And we've got a few lined up next year as well. If you like your Barolos, then hang on to your hats in January, because Sarah Knowles and I will be hosting a Barolo crew tasting with tasting pack in the middle of January. So that's it. Gil, thank you very much for your company this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again at another Wine Society event, online or in person, in the very near future. Thanks very much and have a great evening. Bye now.
Thank you. Cheers.